that's important for happiness. As a company, we're all about thoughtful gifting, and our motto is to make people happy. How can you make people happy if you yourself are not happy? And I say it as like a general thing. I mean, I understand some days are better than others, but in general, you want to be happy going to work. You want to do a job that you like doing that doesn't necessarily feel like work. It's fun.
Welcome to the Her First podcast. We're all about helping female identifying business owners, coaches, and creators build their dream life by putting themselves in the driver's seat.
If you want to transform your business and build the life you want, then make sure to follow our podcast and stay tuned for what's next.
Hello and welcome back to the Her First podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Annabelle DeGrazio of TAJA Collection. So a little bit more about her before we dive in. While working as a lawyer in 2017, Annabelle DeGrazio started TAJA Collection because she was looking for a personal gift for someone she worked with. She wanted to add a cat to a candle, but couldn't find anything that was luxurious, and most options were simply just putting a sticker on a candle. Annabelle launched TAJA Collection to fill the gap in this market with non-toxic, customizable home accessories. And after years of research to perfect the scents that are currently offered, Annabelle is now an expert in scent and fragrance, as well as the candle industry as a whole. Hi, Annabelle. Thank you so much for coming on today. We're so happy to have you.
So happy to be here.
So just to get us started, so we can give us a little bit more information and our listeners, can you tell us how you really started TAJA Collection? We know the problem that you were looking to solve, but what really got you into entrepreneurship and business ownership from the start?
I think it's always been ingrained in me. My dad's an entrepreneur. He came to the country when he was 20 years old. My mom also is an immigrant. So I think coming up with that mentality, entrepreneurial spirit was always there. I think they wanted me to not be an entrepreneur and have something a little more steady. So I became a lawyer, and that was the path that I thought I was going to be on for the rest of my life. But I had this idea, and it sparked something inside of me that has probably been there forever. And I decided to take a risk and see if it would work. And here I am 7 years later. So I don't think it was something that just came about, but I think it was just the right time, the right place, and I took a risk, and I'm really glad I did.
So many entrepreneur stories start like that, right? They just had something in them that they had to create. They had to go down that path, and often choosing the less stable over the sure thing. Like, obviously being a lawyer is a very lucrative career. It costs money to become a lawyer, like go to law school, go through that process, pass the bar exam. And then to kind of leave, I don't know if you fully left that behind, but to leave that behind or somewhat leave that behind to focus on something less sure, not everybody has what it takes to do that. Like, what do you think was in you, or what qualities do you think you had that have made you been able to take that leap from a very steady, good paycheck to being on your own?
Well, they don't call it the golden handcuffs for nothing. It really is that. And it's so hard to leave something that's stable and lucrative. But I do think that for me, I've always been confident in myself and my ability to realize my goals. So, for example, one of those goals was law school. I said, I'm going to go to law school and then I'll figure it out from there. And when I was at law school, there was this one firm in Miami, and I used to drive by it every day. And I used to say, that's where I'm going to work. And it's really hard to get a job there, but I figured it out. And I think I've always had that confidence in myself in setting a goal and really achieving it. It's not always quick and it's not always easy. It did take me a few years to get to my dream firm, but I think I just have that confidence in myself and that resilience and grit and just knowing that I'll figure it out eventually. So for me, when I left, I figured I can always go back to being a lawyer. I don't practice anymore because this is full time for me, but I knew that if it didn't work out, or if in a year's time I figured, all right, let me go back to that stable job, it would still be there. I would just have to obviously keep up my legal education. But other than that, it's not like all of a sudden you get stripped of not being a lawyer. So I think that I had that as like my cushion, but I figured I just had that fire inside of me. And I said, if not now, then when? Because the the more involved in life you get, the harder it is. And the more golden those handcuffs really are. So for me, I didn't have a family yet. I think I was engaged or I had just gotten married. So I didn't have a lot of responsibilities yet. So I figured if I don't do this now, I'm never going to do this. And so I decided that I'm just going to take the leap. I mean, I definitely spoke with my fiance, met my now husband, and just cleared it with him. But I didn't look at it as like the rest of my life. I looked at it like, hey, I'm going to try this out for a year. Let me see, like, let's just see what happens. And I think that also helped not make it feel so permanent. And there's always a way out if I needed it.
I think it takes a really special type of person to go into entrepreneurship and business ownership. A lot of the founders that we speak to have some sort of fire. They have a drive, they have the resilience, they have the grit to figure it out, make it happen, be scrappy, and be driven by something bigger, right? There's some larger mission, vision, purpose, or passion of what it is that they're doing and what it is that they're bringing to the world, which we can already tell you bring to TAJA Collection. So, one of the things that we often talk about, and the thing that kind of grounds this podcast and our community, is her first, in terms of being a female identified person, in terms of being a woman in the world. There are things that we encounter as a gender that can be challenges, struggles, or setbacks that come along with the process, especially in entrepreneurship, especially in business ownership, as we're kind of forging ahead. We're dealing with insecurities, we're dealing with doubts, we're dealing with feelings of imposter syndrome and the way that we're showing up in our businesses, in our brands as a whole. So, for you as a female founder, what are some of the challenges, the setbacks, the potential failures or missteps that you've experienced along your path so far? And then how have you handled those?
I can't say that I think any of my missteps were because of being a woman. I really don't feel like in the entrepreneurial world that is a disadvantage. I did feel like that when I was in corporate America. So I think given my background, I was like, oh, this is great. I have an all female team and I love that. It's not that I don't hire men. I actually just hired a man, so you know, but it's just like we have a nice community here. And part of what I wanted to do with my company coming out of my background was to uplift these women. And so I always say, once somebody joins the team, like, what are your goals? And also, if it's not being here forever, if you have bigger dreams or bigger goals, that's okay. I'm happy to be part of the journey. How can I help? I don't ever want to stunt somebody's growth. And if they're only here for a moment in their time, that's fine too. So I like to encourage everyone to really go after what they love, what they're passionate about. And if that's staying here and growing with me, then that's wonderful. And I've been lucky enough to have a team who has been with me for almost since the beginning, and that's really special. And so we continue to grow together. But I think that that's something that I like to encourage, especially coming from a place where that wasn't necessarily the case. It was kind of like you're in or you're out. And I think it was a lot harder climbing the corporate ladder as a woman than it is being an entrepreneur as a woman, because there's a lot of difficulties, but one of the benefits is that I have more flexible hours and I do make my own schedule. No one's telling me I have to be here at a certain time. I do it because I want to be successful and I love what I do. But it's also nice because I'm a mom now. And so if I need to go, pick up one of my kids because they're sick, I can do that myself. And I don't have to explain it to anybody, and nobody's like judging me about it or looking down at me for doing that or for being a mom or taking time out of my work to, deal with personal things. So I think that I've really used it to my benefit, and like I really value it because I've seen it both ways. I always say that if I was a lawyer today, I don't even know if I would have kids right now. It's so hard. And I give credit to all of those women because I know how hard it is. And I don't know that I myself could have done it. So I think there's a lot of advantages to being an entrepreneur and being a woman. And also, Yeah, people probably underestimate me. When I told my colleagues and my friends and even my family that I was gonna leave my job to start a candle business that was primarily online, everybody thought I was out of my mind, especially after what it takes to all the schooling and taking the bar and the testing, and all after doing all of that and then, like, leaving it behind for a direct to consumer freight like, candle company, it's a little crazy. And so I kind of love that though, because everybody underestimated me. And so now people are like, wow, you're doing it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing it. But it wasn't like, it wasn't an easy road, but also no one expected anything really. So I've sort of outperformed that expectation. So that's great in itself.
I think that's one of the coolest things about entrepreneurship for women is that we can be underestimated. I spent 10 years in the corporate world and I felt like I got overlooked, undervalued for years. When I decided to become I started dabbling into entrepreneurship, I had someone really close to me laugh at the idea that I could have a business that makes $100,000 in a year, right? Like in my business now, we're 2.5 years in and we're close to making 1 million in total. They underestimate you. And I think the beauty of entrepreneurship is if you're like that woman and you're underestimated by your family, you're underestimated by the people you work with. If you go out on your own, it doesn't actually, everyone could underestimate you. It doesn't matter because you're bringing in the sales, you're building the business, you're creating the thing. Everyone can think you suck. Everyone can think, oh, she can't do it. But if you're doing it, it actually doesn't matter anymore what people think. But when you're in like a corporate setting, it does matter. Like it matters that people underestimate you. So you're just basically creating your own future. One of the things that we, a couple episodes back, talked about on this podcast was the concept of being an entrepreneur as a woman is like countercultural. Like you're almost like protesting against society. And one of the things that we talked about was that we actually have the power as female entrepreneurs, you have the power to create a culture that is different, right? So you talking about creating a company of mostly women and one man now, right? Like mostly women and one man, you speak about the flexibility and being able to pick up your kids. And I'd imagine, I'd love to hear more about this, that you're creating a culture in your workplace that a woman is not being penalized if her kid is sick, right? Like that you're kind of can actually help change that narrative and change corporate culture to not hold women back because the reality of being a mother or really all humans should have all humans should have this flexibility. Let's be real, but it does affect women, I think, more than men.
I think that well, nobody on my team has kids yet, but once they do, that's definitely gonna be the culture. And even now, I mean, everybody is like around 10 years younger than me. And so like I have the benefit of hindsight. So I like to encourage them to take a vacation and travel and do things because that's important. That's important for happiness. As a company, we're all about thoughtful gifting, and our motto is to make people happy. How can you make people happy if you yourself are not happy? And I say it as like a general thing. I mean, I understand some days are better than others, but in general, you want to be happy going to work. You want to do a job that you like doing that doesn't necessarily feel like work. It's fun and you like the people you work with. They don't have to be your best friends, but it's a good environment. And so that's really important to me. That's something that I stress. That is the culture that I want to have, that I work to have every day. And my messaging to my team is to really take the time for yourself. Self care is important. If you're not going to come to work with a positive attitude, it's going to come out in the products. I truly believe that. Like even when because we do all of our own fulfillment, we make the candles, we engrave them, we pour them. So from every step of the way, all of your emotions are going into this. If you're not really into it and you're not happy and it's going to come out in the product. So I think that putting the time and effort into your happiness, your self-care, then it really shows in the end result. And I think that's what's really helped us grow. And I think that people really understand that when you shop with us, you're not getting an automated reply. Some actual person is answering you. And if you call us, we're actually picking up the phone. It's not like AI in a different country. So I think that it's all tied into it. And look, that can be draining too. Like customer service is exhausting and it can really weigh on you. So I like to kind of like do a tap in, tap out thing. Like if you've had it and it's too much, just tap out and someone else will come in because it can be exhausting too. And so it goes with this idea of like your own mental health and making sure that you're taking care of yourself and that you are in a good place when you show up every day.
As a founder, as a business owner, you really are taking on a position of leadership, of mentorship. You're determining the company culture that you're crafting and creating around you. And that team, all of that energy, I truly believe permeates into everything that you're doing, all that you're talking about, from your marketing to your customer service to your delivery to, how you handle issues with orders. Like all of that is a touch point of your brand, and it communicates your vision, and it communicates how you're showing up in the world and whether people want to share your product, talk about your product, continue to purchase your product. So not only is it a positive environment that you're creating for the experience of your team and the company that you have, but it also feeds out into the rest of the world and results in tangible results, right? Return on investment and your ability to make sales. So I think it's important to consider it from all of those angles and be really thoughtful about how that leadership, that mentorship, that guidance is showing up in your company, in your business, and in your brand as a whole. So as you've expanded your leadership and how you've kind of moved through that experience of like onboarding team members, guiding them, and everything else, what sort of lessons have you learned in regards to working with people, managing people, and how you kind of stay true to the vision of the company while having those dealings?
One of my biggest lessons, and something that I would say I really tried to work on, and I hope that my team would test to improvement on my end, is I'm really trying not to micromanage. I think as a founder and somebody who poured their blood, sweat, and tears into a company and taken all these risks, it's hard not to want to micromanage every situation and be on top of it and do it exactly how I want it. I think that now trusting my team and investing a lot of time into my team and making sure that we're solid and we're strong and we're happy and we work well together and we're all working toward this common goal of making other people happy, I think that I can pull it back a little bit and empower these women and empower them to make decisions and not ask me for approval on every single thing. And I think it's only made us stronger and it's made my job easier. So I think, and it's also, it empowers my team because they don't have to ask me for every little thing and they're able to grow in their own roles. And I think that that's important too, because nobody wants to be stagnant.
Such an important part of scaling, right? You're not going to be able to scale if you have to have your hands and micromanage everything. I read somewhere, I don't know, in some business book, I'm sure it was one of those big people, said like if someone can do something 80% as good as you, then you just fully pass it off and let them do it. Like you don't even check in. You just, not that you don't check in like a good manager, but you don't have to look at every single thing they do. You let them do it. And what I've found for myself is when I do that, when I let the reins go and someone's at that like 80% and let them go, they end up doing it better than I would do it. When they get there, they can grow, and that's going to let your business scale.
100%. And I think that there's an ownership that they have when they do it entirely on their own. I mean, it's very similar to having kids and letting them figure things out on their own rather than saying, "Well, wait, let me do it. I can do it faster, or I can do it for you. It'll take me 2 seconds." Sometimes it's important to struggle through it to figure out how to do it, and I think it's so comparable. A lot of parenting lessons translate into being a manager and managing a team because it's similar tools.
And the ability to scale will be determined by team development and the talent that you're able to acquire, hold on to, and help progress at their own level. We know that people want to feel fulfilled in what they're doing. They want to enjoy what they're doing. They want to feel like they have the capacity to do it. And sometimes we, as business owners, leaders, founders, we have to be able to relinquish that control and trust. And if something goes wrong, know that that's okay. And we're going to deal with it as it comes. There are so many, I feel like, learning lessons that come along with business. You said parenting applications, these things that we kind of pull from other parts of our lives. I truly believe that personal development and growth is such an integral part to business ownership, creating, growing, scaling a company. I feel like there are things that we need to deal with at a personal level to be able to overcome the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, like dealing and communicating with team members, being able to be honest, being able to be vulnerable, allowing ourselves to hear criticism when it is directed and be able to respond accordingly. So, for yourself, Annabelle, as you've moved through TAJA Collection over the years, what do you feel like from a personal development or growth standpoint has been part of your journey? And how has that helped you in your business?
I think becoming a parent is huge for all the reasons that you just said. I think the applications really help, especially patience. I am not a big patient person. It's not my strong suit. So I think that having being forced to work on that at home helps me be more patient as a business owner. Every day there's fires to put out or something is going on. So I think just being more patient and being more mindful of, okay, everything's going to be okay. What are the best ways to deal with this? How can I do this in an efficient way? And how can I figure this out without panicking and freaking out? I'll give you an example. We did a candle making class for like a private club in Palm Beach not too long ago. And it was, something that we don't normally do, but it was like a really big deal. And it was a really good like business move for us. It was a new market. We've been trying to penetrate into like other markets. And this was like a perfect demographic for us. And nobody had really known about us. So it would have been a great new business opportunity. So we decided to do it. We had been preparing for weeks. It was, again, out of our comfort zone, but something that I thought would be really beneficial. We get there, it's about 2 hours away. And we realize that we have all of the materials, but we don't have the wick. I mean, you cannot make a candle without a wick. So I feel like years ago, I would have panicked, freaked out, yelled at people probably, and just lost my mind. But without even consciously making a change, I was pretty calm about it. And I said, okay, well, let's figure this out. What are our options? Like, what can we do? Is there a craft store around here? I had someone from my team just get in the car with the wicks just to start making their way there. Because if that was our best option, then we would start a little bit later, but at least we would get the wicks. So just putting all of these solutions in motion, but also not panicking about it and not getting mad about it. That was a really big turning point. And my colleague who was with me, she actually said at the end, she's like, you really didn't freak out. And I'm really impressed. I think that also helped. Like that was a big personal growth moment for me because that's not my nature normally. So I'm very type A. I want things to be perfect and exact. So I think that was a big win for me on a personal level, but also within my business because I'm like, okay, I'm starting to get into the groove of this and I'm confident that we'll figure out a solution and everybody around me is competent and we all can figure this out together. And we did. And it was great. It was fine. We found wicks at a local craft store. I ran and got them. I was like drenched in sweat, but it all worked out. And so I think that just practicing these things also, like I've started meditating, which is huge. And that probably helped with this too. And just taking a beat and taking a breath and not reacting so quickly. So I think the personal and work always for me they're hand in hand. There's no real separation. So if I'm working on something personally, it only helps with my business and vice versa.
Yeah, and that example you gave in that moment, I know we talked about like company culture and building different company cultures. I'm sure that spoke volumes of your character and your company culture to your team. So now they know that maybe they make a mistake or have an issue. How many times in like corporate America do people hide their mistakes and they just get bigger and bigger and bigger because they're too scared to go to their boss because they're going to get yelled at? Now someone saw that, they saw that happen and they go, okay, if I make a mistake, so your company grows and you stop going on events, say you're not even there and that happened while you were gone, they're going to model your behavior. They're going to say, okay, what are the possible solutions? What do we do? Then they're going to fill you in on what happened and how they solved it. And you're modeling how you would want them to act in that situation and then providing that safe space. Now they know if they make an error, they can come to you and you're not going to yell. You're not going to be mad. You're going to focus on solutions and solve the problems. Now, obviously, as a business owner, sometimes there's mistakes you actually have to deal with, but people make mistakes. Something forgets to get packed. You fix it, you move on. That's not negligence. And you can even think, okay, how do we not let that happen next time, right? You can think through those solutions, but very objectively. I want to switch gears a little bit because we have a lot of early stage entrepreneurs and people who are just kind of maybe they have a side hustle or they're just getting started in this world of entrepreneurship. And one of the things that's always a big challenge is like getting the initial sales, the initial growth, the initial followers on social media. You had an idea for a business, you start building that business, but how do you go from zero, no following, nobody to like your first sales? And what did that look like for you?
It looked a lot like Instagram. It was all Instagram. It was 7 years ago, and I mean, we had an Instagram before I even had a website. It was just so prevalent then, and that's how I grew. So that was how I got my first sale, via DM from a store, and that's how we continue to grow. I do really lean on community though as well, and I like to go to things. So yes, as much as we scale and we grow, I might not be at all the events or all of the classes, but I really still think it's important to be there and to show up because, first of all, it's a great opportunity for me to be on the ground and speak with our customers and speak with potential customers. And that's always a huge opportunity because it might not be a one candle order. Maybe that person has a business and they want to order 1,000 candles for their business. So I like to always keep options open and I like to always be on the ground, not every day, but as much as possible. And I do think that for that first sale, that's actually not the hardest. I feel like the 10th sale is the hardest because, at first people are so excited to support you. So your community will really be there and they'll be like, yep, I'm going to buy into whatever you're selling because I want to support you. And that's amazing. But when it gets really hard is after that initial newness comes out, then it's kind of like calms down and then it's like, okay, well, what random people in the middle of the country is going to purchase my product? Because that's when I've made it. When I see orders from not, Florida, New York, California, I'm like, okay, cool. This is cool. We're really penetrating other markets and we're really getting out there. It's not just our little networks or, people I went to college with or people who live over here that, where my family lives or whatever. It's really just expansion. That's the hardest part. And I think for that, what we've done is really just lean into our community and really foster every single point of contact. So, like what I was saying about customer service, like if somebody calls us with a question, you're actually talking to somebody here. It's not that you're talking to somebody overseas that isn't really connected to the product. And also, people have questions about it because every single part of the journey of creating your custom candle is personal. And again, ordering a candle online is kind of a crazy concept. So people have questions. They want to know, hey, if I really like this smell, should I go with this one? What do you think? And they want to talk to somebody. So we have that there. And I think that helps. Like that's one sale. Then that person gifts it to somebody else. And that person's like, wow, this is a great gift. And then they gift it to somebody else. And that's kind of how we grew and continue to grow. And I feel like that's how you really get the ball rolling with sales.
We often forget all of the potential opportunities that are out there. I think sometimes there's a narrow lens or a narrow focus on, oh, well, I'm going to get on Instagram and then I'm just going to be on Instagram, but we forget about in-person opportunities. Oh, I'm just going to leverage TikTok, but then I forget about Pinterest or other digital platforms or showcases or introductions or award opportunities. I think that as we grow our physical product business, it's been what are the connections? What's the networking opportunity? What's the introduction to the person who could be the connection to this thing that you never even thought was an opportunity that gets you into this store that is then a chain location of all these? But it really is being open. It's about being open, it's about being receptive, and it's about having almost like an energetic thumbprint or footprint in what it is that you're doing that builds those connections and creates that community, because people want to be a part of something. As human beings, we're inclined to participate. And when they see that kind of energy within a brand, when they recognize that this is a beautiful candle that not only they love, but they also know that these other people will love, they want to share it. And word of mouth is still actually one of the number one ways to gain new clientele. It's also the most affordable because you're not paying for it. We forget about all of those opportunities. So as you yourself as a listener are thinking about how I either get those initial sales or how I continue to expand, to grow, to reach the people who have no idea that I exist, think outside of the box. Think about all of the different channels that you have access to. Think about the press, think about the publications, think about the interviews, the podcast, being a guest on a podcast, and being able to leverage those opportunities, seek them out, and feel comfortable pitching yourself for them. Have ownership of what it is that you do, have confidence in what it is that you're bringing to the world, and being able to communicate that, get behind your message, believe in what you're doing, believe in what you're bringing to the world, and then be able to, again, seize those opportunities. So as we're kind of reflecting on what you've been able to do to grow, how you've managed your team, you said you've been in business for 7 years, things are going well, things are thriving. Is there anything that you look back on how you've invested your time, your energy as a founder, as a business owner, that you are either like, yes, that was absolutely necessary and I'm so glad I've done it, and or I probably would have done this a little bit differently and I learned that lesson?
I really try not to look back just because there's no point. Like I can't really change the past. I try to learn obviously lessons from any mistakes I've made along the way, but for me it's not the best exercise. I really like to like last year, I'll give you an example. I had this theory. I was like, okay, I'm going to say yes to opportunities that I might not normally say yes to. It was my year of yes. For example, I had just had my daughter and I was like, okay, well now I can travel. So let me say yes to more things. So one of my colleagues said, "Hey, let's go to the Dallas market. Let's show at the Dallas market. Let's get a booth. It's a huge investment." And we haven't really done that many trade shows. It's not necessarily where I see the brand going, but I was like, "Yes, let's try it." Yes. Big investment. It was okay. There were great things about it and also not great things about it. Would I do it again? Probably not. There's another example. We did a pop-up in a mall local here, and it was a great opportunity. So much work. Such a great opportunity. I mean, we were in a real mall next to Zara and I mean, like big name stores that I grew up shopping at. So I was like, this is so cool. And again, very cool opportunity. I'm so glad I said yes. And they were like, "Oh, do you want to stay permanently?" And I was like, "No." So I think there's always lessons in looking back and saying like, okay, this was a great thing. This wasn't a great thing. But I really like to do it very quickly and just like move on because I think you don't know unless you try. This year, I did not say yes to everything. But I really did want to learn from that. And what I learned from that was go with your gut because deep down, I feel like I knew what was the right thing, but I was trying to get out of my comfort zone and try new things and shake it up a bit. We, we've had such crazy growth year over year since I started. And then in the last couple of years, it's slowed down. I mean, there's still been growth, but it hasn't been this like crazy percentage that we are used to. And so that's kind of why I was like, all right, let me shake it up. Let me try new things. But what I realized this year is just sticking to what you know and sticking to what you feel like is a good business decision and has worked in the past, and maybe just like double down on that is probably the better choice. I'm glad I had my year of yes, but I won't do that again. But again, I did learn from it and I did gain more confidence from it this year coming in and saying like, okay, this is what's worked for us. Let's keep it going. Let's double down on this. Let's increase our ads budget on these platforms because this is really what yields high, revenue. So just kind of like maneuvering through that has been really helpful. But, in terms of any regrets, I think that it all played a role in teaching me, and making me more confident in my decisions this year.
That's such a great energy to lean into because I think so many people are scared and business owners included of trying things. And I think it's because of that worry of, am I going to regret it? Am I going to regret the time and the money, the investment? But there has to be a level of like, let me try this all in, but then a quick no when you like making a quick no when you realize, okay, I'm going to stop. Right. So you're going to try something. And if it's not for you, like get out as fast as you can. And if it is for you, do it again. But making those decisions fast is going to really help your business grow or, keep your business stuck. Right. And having that sort of almost positive mentality towards negative experiences can really make a big difference in how you progress in a year.
Definitely. I mean, the year of yes was great. It was an expensive year. My accountant was like, "Why did you spend all this money here?" And I was like, "I was just trying something new." But again, great learning year. So I'd say that was like my
Yeah. And you
master's.
just paid less in taxes that year, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, the year of yes. I think it's Shonda Rhimes, the creator of Grey's Anatomy and Bridgerton. I read that book some time ago. And just opening yourself to opportunity. It doesn't mean those opportunities are always going to be successful or bring about the most amazing change that you're hoping for or wanting in the world, but it just kind of it changes your mindset, I think, is what the important thing is, right? Like it just shifts your perspective so that you are more open, more attuned. And I think it also allows you to feed into the intuitive side of business. Sometimes you have to go so far to one side of the spectrum to understand like where you are, where your decision making process comes from, how you can listen to yourself a little bit better. When you're constantly saying yes, you're not necessarily tuning into intuition, but you're opening yourself up to trial and error. And then when you're saying no to everything, you're just kind of closing yourself off. So there's this sweet spot in the middle. I forget where this comes from or where the statistic is, but a majority of high-level CEOs and business owners say that they use their intuition for decision making more than they use logic or reason. And we have to be able to cultivate that as leaders because there are going to be a lot of things that maybe the facts are telling you one thing, but your intuition, your awareness, like that internal piece of you and that compass is having you head in another direction. And sometimes you have to pay attention to that. Sometimes you got to listen. So, speaking to how you've responded to situations, speaking to the self-care, speaking to, being able to go pick up your daughter, being able to have the flexibility and freedom with her first, prioritizing you in business and life, we focus on making sure that we're taking care of ourselves personally as well as professionally. So as you manage everything that you do, how do you find that balance for yourself? How do you take care of yourself? How do you prioritize you in leading an incredibly successful brand and business?
It's definitely not a science. I think that some days I do it much better than others. For example, today I have been slammed. I've been at the office since like 7:45 in the morning. So it's been, a day. We are busy and I have to be here and it's like back to back nonstop. But I have a pedicure after this. So I really try to squeeze in like a little bit of self-care. I mean, also if you saw my toes, you would be like, you need to do this. This is like imperative. I work out a lot. I think that that is a really important outlet for me. I love to sweat. I love to, take group fitness classes. I've recently been doing infrared yoga, and that has been so great. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you I do it every single day and I'm religious about it. I wish I could. Things come up, and that's okay. So again, some days I'm so much better at like really like having a self-care day and starting my morning with my yoga and drinking my matcha. And some days it's like I don't have time to even look in the mirror. I'm like already at the office and running around doing a million different things and I don't have a second to breathe. So I'm trying to get better at that, but I think it's a give and a take, and it's something that of course I really try not to push myself to the point, because I have done this where my body will shut down if I don't have 3 meals a day and work out and do these things that you kind of need to do to feel good. my body will just be like, no way. And I get really exhausted or I'll get migraines. And so it is really important to do. And so now I really treat it almost like a job, like I schedule it in. So, like in my calendar, it is like a time block. And that is a block that I know nobody's going to schedule me for a call and we don't have any meetings or anything like that. And that is time that's devoted to either working out or getting a pedicure. So I really try to schedule it in. I think that, it's that quote, like fail to plan, plan to fail. Like that holds very true. So sometimes it's a little strange to schedule in your self-care, but it's necessary.
Yeah, and as an entrepreneur, like your value starts to become not just in like what you produce in a day, but like in how your mind works. Like how can you be thinking of the next thing? And that can be especially for people who had like traditional jobs, where if you're at Starbucks, like your job is to make coffee and that is your job and to make the coffee in the way that Starbucks tells you to make the coffee. But when you're an entrepreneur, you can have $1 million idea in 10 minutes. But if you're not taking care of yourself physically, if your brain can't function right because you don't have proper nutrition, that actually like affects how you can perform in a day. And then add in like being a mom, like that affects how you mother and all of those things. And finding those pockets, even when things are crazy, to decompress, to take care of your body, take care of your nutrition, just let go is so important. One thing I did on my last vacation, I was so proud of myself for because this is really, really hard for me, is I at times left my cell phone in the hotel. And I just left it in there because I knew that it's too tempting. It's too tempting to check if that person made the sale. And it's too tempting to see how many views your YouTube video has. And it's too tempting to check Slack to see if your team needs anything. It's just too tempting. And my husband's really good at not over checking his phone. So it was like, I will leave my phone there. We have a means of communication or navigation or Googling something, but I don't have the temptation to be like divided in my thought, like I am here with my family. And of course, as a business owner, I have things I have to do on vacation, and that's fine. But I pocketed it away. I was like, okay, I'm going to look at stuff this morning to catch up. The reality is doing that, putting it away, probably actually made me more productive because then I said, okay, I'm just going to take an hour this morning, check everything out, and then put it away. And that probably was way more productive than looking every 15 minutes.
I totally agree. I haven't done that yet, but I'm going to try that. For me, I love, this is another thing that I really like to encourage my team. This is why traveling is so important. Getting out of this space, sometimes really your creativity will run wild. Sometimes when you're constrained and you're just in that mundane day to day hamster wheel, you're not thinking, oh, wait, that's a great $1 million idea. And for everybody on the team, even if you're not developing a product, I mean, you can always improve on what we're doing. And I say that at every team meeting, I'm always like, if there's a way to do what you're doing better, or if you have any recommendations or changes, like don't feel like you have to do it the way I told you to do it. This is how I found it to be best, but feel free, like go crazy. And so I think getting out of the space and also disconnecting is really important.
It really opens up that space to think more creatively, to be more reflective, to just get away from it all. You can get wrapped up in the day-to-day and the tasks, the activities, the putting out fires, the responding. I like to call it reactive. Everything that you do reactively to your business, to your work, and how you're showing up instead of being proactive. And when you can take the distance, when you can take the separation, that's that proactive time. That's your ability to create, to craft, to dream, to think forward about what are the opportunities, where are you going to show up next? Like, what's the beauty of what we're doing as entrepreneurs as a whole? We're creating something out of nothing. And you can't always do that when you're reacting to everything that's being thrown your way. So, beautiful thing to keep in mind when it comes to balance. I think that so many people get hung up on needing to do things in this way all the time. If I'm going to have a healthy habit or if there's going to be consistency, it needs to be at this exact time. It needs to be in this exact way. And if that doesn't work, then I'm just not going to do anything and everything falls to the side. But really, it's about responding accordingly to what your business is giving you. And there are seasons and there are different times. And it's your ability to, I like the term that Mimi Bouchard uses, which is your bounce back rate. It's your ability to, again, react to what's happening and be okay with those transitions, be okay with those times of less focus on fitness, but still putting it in these places, or doing it on these days, but not necessarily on these days when they feel overrun. And knowing that for yourself, as you're navigating those challenging times, that balance is something that you find within yourself. It's not a set schedule. It's not what somebody else is doing. It's not feeling like you have to execute on all of these things. So Annabelle DeGrazio from TAJA Collection, thank you so much for joining us today. If someone wants a candle, if they want a home accessory, if they want to find you and just be more connected, where can they do that?
You can find us at TAJAcollection.com or at TAJA Collection on Instagram. DM us, say hello. We will say hi back.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on the Her First podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Find the link in the show notes to join us in our free Facebook group to discuss the podcast, ask questions of our guest experts, and network with a group of female entrepreneurs who value collaboration over competition.
Please subscribe, share, leave a review, and be sure to catch our next episode. What is one thing you can do today to prioritize you in business and life?